The sterile hum of the operating chamber resonated against the crystalline walls of the Teleria Intergalactic Medical Station. Standing at the head of the patient's levitating biobed, Dr. Masrin's 3 sets of eyes darted between the oscillating readings on the holographic monitors. Her tricolored skin glowed faintly with the stress her physiology could not outwardly express. The patient, a Drexilian, was slipping away, his iridescent skin dulling to an ominous gray. His twin pulmonary nodules had already ceased their rhythmic pulses, leaving the chamber heavy with tension. "This is beyond our capability," Masrin admitted, her usually steady voice wavering. "The bioplasmic regulators are failing to stabilize his energy flow." Her colleague Veras, a Zalthor with a serpentine body and over a century of medical experience, bristled with frustration. "We've recalibrated every harmonic frequency known to the Drexilian species. Nothing matches the disruption in his energy circuits. His internal plasma flow is collapsing faster than we can compensate." Masrin hesitated before adding quietly, "We may be losing him." The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Despite Teleria's reputation as the apex of medical advancement across 3 star systems, it seemed that even their best couldn't save Ambassador Varel. At the edge of the room, standing awkwardly against the curved crystalline wall, was Dr. Nathan Carter, a human emergency physician from Earth. He was a recent addition to the medical exchange program, a symbolic gesture by the Galactic Medical Consortium to integrate human ingenuity into advanced alien medicine. In practice, however, Nathan's knowledge was often dismissed as crude and primitive. "Do you have something to contribute?" Dr. Carter Masrin asked sharply, her frustration making her glow more intensely. She had noticed him inching closer to the monitors. Nathan straightened and cleared his throat. "I might. Look, I know this situation isn't exactly in my wheelhouse, but I've seen some parallels back on Earth." "Parallels?" Varas's voice coiled with skepticism. "You mean to compare a Drexilian plasma system to your species' rudimentary blood vessels?" Nathan ignored the jab. He was used to the condescension by now. "Kind of. Yeah, I mean, the mechanisms are obviously different, but the principle might be the same. What if the plasma disruption isn't the disease itself but a symptom? Like a blockage, or maybe an autoimmune response gone haywire." "Autoimmune response?" Masrin repeated, her glow dimming slightly. "It's when the body starts attacking itself," Nathan explained, stepping closer. "On Earth, I've treated cases where the immune system gets so overzealous it creates massive inflammation, cutting off blood flow or damaging vital organs. If your bioplasmic regulators aren't working, maybe it's because his plasma flow is being disrupted by something systemic, not mechanical." Varus curled his sinuous body tighter, his skepticism radiating in waves. "Even if your theory held any merit, how would you propose to resolve such a disruption? Drexilian plasma is not merely fluid. It is a harmonized state of energy, intricately tuned to their unique physiology. Your earthly methods are incompatible with such complexity." "Maybe," Nathan admitted, glancing at the diplomat's pale form. "But have you actually looked for a source? Checked his plasma for any foreign particles or signs of contamination?" Masrin blinked all 3 sets of eyes at once. "We haven't conducted an invasive plasma scan. Doing so could destabilize his system further." "But not doing it leaves you flying blind," Nathan countered. "Back home, when we don't know what's causing the problem, we dig deeper. Sometimes the answer is in the thing you're too scared to touch." Masrin's glow shifted uncertainly. "And if destabilizing him results in total collapse?" Nathan stepped closer, meeting her gaze with a steady resolve. "If we do nothing, he's dead anyway. At least this gives us a chance." For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the bioplasmic regulators failing to maintain their rhythm. Finally, Masrin gestured toward the scanning equipment. "Prepare the invasive scan." Varus hissed in disapproval, but did not argue. Nathan moved quickly to assist, his hands deftly adjusting the controls on the equipment. The scanner emitted a low-frequency hum as it passed over the diplomat's body. The holographic display began to fill with intricate patterns representing the plasma's energy flow. "There," Nathan said, pointing to a jagged, unnatural spike in the readings. "What's that?" Masrin frowned. "That is an anomaly." Varus uncoiled slightly to examine the display. It is not native to Drexelian physiology. A foreign body? A contaminant. Can we isolate it? Nathan asked. Masrin nodded, her hands working the controls with practiced precision. The anomaly was magnified on the display, revealing what appeared to be a cluster of crystalline particles suspended within the plasma flow. This is unprecedented, Veras admitted grudgingly. The particles are refracting the plasma's harmonics, creating chaotic oscillations. This must be the cause of the disruption. Okay, Nathan said, his mind already racing. How do we get it out? Extracting such particles from an energy-based system is highly delicate, Masrin said, her glow dimming with apprehension. Even the smallest disturbance could cascade into total systemic failure. Right, Nathan said, rubbing his jaw. So we don't remove it, we neutralize it. Neutralize it, Veras repeated, his tone incredulous. Nathan nodded. If these particles are refracting the plasma harmonics, maybe we can find a counter-frequency to stabilize them. Kind of like noise-canceling headphones. Masrin tilted her head, considering. A counter-frequency. It is a bold idea, but one requiring extreme precision. We would need to construct a harmonic field generator tailored to his plasma's unique resonance. Then let's get started, Nathan said. It will not be that simple, Veras warned. Harmonic field generators are not designed for Drexelian physiology. To calibrate one correctly would take days, perhaps weeks, and Ambassador Varel does not have that kind of time. Nathan glanced at the equipment lining the chamber, his mind working furiously. What if we adapt something you already have? Use a neural stabilizer or a localized frequency modulator as a base and reconfigure it. Masrin exchanged a doubtful look with Veras, but there was a flicker of hope in her expression. It could work, but the margin for error is infinitesimal. Then we don't make an error, Nathan said firmly. Masrin sighed. Very well. Begin preparations. If this fails. Nathan didn't let her finish the thought. He was already moving, his hands deftly working to modify the equipment with the help of Masrin's advanced understanding of Drexelian physiology. Veras, though skeptical, contributed as well, his extensive knowledge of harmonic resonance proving invaluable. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, calibrating the makeshift harmonic field generator to match the Drexelian plasma's unique frequency. Despite their best efforts, the readings on the monitors showed no improvement in the ambassador's condition. We're running out of time, Masrin said, her voice grim. Nathan felt the weight of her words but refused to give up. There's something we're missing. We've got to find it. The operating chamber was eerily quiet except for the soft hum of the failing bioplasmic regulators. Ambassador Varel's condition was deteriorating quickly. His once vivid iridescence had dimmed to a lifeless gray, his respiratory nodules fluttering irregularly like a failing engine. Nathan Carter leaned against the console, staring at the jagged plasma readings on the holographic display. Despite hours of work, the modifications to the harmonic field generator hadn't produced any improvement. The crystalline particles remained in the Drexelian's plasma, refracting its harmonics and destabilizing the entire system. What if we're focusing on the wrong thing, Nathan muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Masrin's tri-colored eyes flicked toward him. Explain. Well, we're trying to stabilize the plasma harmonics without addressing what's causing the disruption, Nathan said, gesturing to the display. It's like trying to calm a storm without finding the source of the wind. What if the particles are actively generating instability, not just passively refracting it? Masrin's glow dimmed as she considered this. If that is the case, neutralizing the particles would indeed be more effective than simply attempting to stabilize the harmonics. But how would you propose to neutralize something that interacts with plasma at such a fundamental level? Nathan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Back on Earth, when we encounter a toxin or foreign body causing widespread damage, we focus on either neutralizing its chemical properties or isolating it so it can't do any more harm. Maybe we can do something similar here? Those particles are not toxins or inert contaminants, Veras interjected, his serpentine form coiling tighter with impatience. They are a refractive anomaly, entirely unique to Drexelian plasma systems. Neutralizing them would require a molecular resonance tailored to their specific structure. Creating such precision on a theoretical basis alone is impossible. Nathan frowned, staring hard at the display. What if we didn't have to tailor it entirely from scratch? What if we could map their resonance using real-time feedback from his plasma? Masrin tilted her head, her glow flickering faintly. Real-time feedback? That would require constant recalibration, adjusting the neutralizing resonance as the particles interact with the plasma. The complexity of such a system would exceed the capabilities of most harmonic field generators. Unless, Nathan said, his voice trailing off. Masrin leaned closer. Unless what? Unless we use a closed-loop modulator, Nathan said, his tone gaining urgency. If we can modify the harmonic generator to read the plasma's harmonic shifts in real time, we can create a feedback loop that continuously adjusts the neutralizing resonance. Iris hissed softly, his tone skeptical but intrigued. A closed-loop modulator. Theoretically it could work, but adapting the equipment to such a degree would take time. Nathan looked at the ambassador, whose condition had worsened further. His respiratory nodules had all but stopped moving. We don't have time, Nathan said, his voice steady despite the pressure. Let's start now. Masrin and Veris exchanged a glance. Despite their doubts, they moved quickly to assist, their advanced understanding of Drexilian physiology and Tellurian technology complementing Nathan's practical ingenuity. Hours later, the modified harmonic generator sat in the center of the chamber, its glowing circuitry casting faint patterns on the crystalline walls. The device now incorporated a sophisticated feedback system, capable of reading the plasma's harmonic shifts and adjusting the neutralizing resonance in real time. This is as ready as it will ever be, Masrin said, her glow dim from exhaustion. Nathan wiped the sweat from his brow. Let's do it. Iris adjusted the controls on the holographic console, activating the generator. A soft hum filled the chamber as the device began to emit a carefully calibrated harmonic field. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, slowly, the jagged oscillations on the holographic display began to smooth out. The chaotic refracting patterns of the crystalline particles diminished as the feedback loop adjusted the resonance in real time. It's stabilizing, Masrin said, her glow brightening with cautious hope. Nathan watched the display intently, his heart pounding. Come on, come on. But just as the plasma harmonics appeared to stabilize completely, the readings spiked again. The oscillations became more chaotic than ever, and the ambassador's respiratory nodules sputtered weakly. It's not working, Veris said, his voice tight. Nathan clenched his fists, his mind racing. We're missing something. The particles. They're adapting to the resonance. They're actively countering it. Masrin's glow dimmed. If the particles can adapt, we may not be able to neutralize them using harmonic fields alone. Then we need to stop playing defense, Nathan said. If the particles are adapting, that means they're reacting to the plasma itself. Maybe we can manipulate the plasma to force them into a dormant state. Veris frowned. How do you propose to manipulate a harmonized energy state without destabilizing it further? Nathan hesitated, thinking back to his days in Earth's emergency rooms. On Earth, when we have a patient with a deadly infection that's resistant to treatment, sometimes we induce hypothermia to slow their body's processes. It buys us time to figure out the treatment. What if we do something similar here? Slow down his plasma flow enough to weaken the particle's activity without shutting him down entirely. Masrin's glow flickered thoughtfully. Inducing plasma stasis. It is an unconventional approach, but it could theoretically work. We would need to recalibrate the bioplasmic regulators to maintain a controlled energy state at reduced flow. Let's do it, Nathan said. Recalibrating the bioplasmic regulators was a painstaking process. Every adjustment required careful monitoring to ensure the ambassador's condition didn't deteriorate further. Veris handled the intricate technical modifications, while Masrin monitored the ambassador's vitals with precision. Nathan focused on coordinating their efforts, his practical experience helping to streamline the process. After several tense hours, the regulators were ready. Masrin initiated the plasma stasis protocol, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. The ambassador's plasma flow slowed gradually, the chaotic oscillations diminishing as the particle's activity weakened. On the holographic display, the jagged readings smoothed out into a steady, subdued rhythm. It's holding, Masrin said, her glow brightening with relief. Nathan let out a shaky breath. That buys us some time. Now we need to figure out how to get those particles out of his system for good. Varys studied the display, his skepticism giving way to cautious respect. Your earthly ingenuity may have just given him a chance, Dr. Carter, but this is far from over. Nathan nodded, his determination unwavering. Then let's finish what we started. The subdued hum of the bioplasmic regulators filled the chamber, their recalibrated rhythm maintaining the delicate plasma stasis within Ambassador Varel. His iridescent skin remained muted, but the alarming signs of instability had subsided. For now. Nathan Carter stared at the holographic display, his arms crossed as he considered the next steps. The crystalline particles within the ambassador's plasma were still present, their refractive properties merely dampened by the induced stasis. They needed to find a way to remove or neutralize them permanently before the stasis protocol started to fail. Mazarin adjusted the monitors, her tricolored eyes focused on the patient. The plasma stasis is holding, but it is not a long-term solution. Even at reduced flow, the particles are adapting. Their structure is shifting. Nathan frowned. Shifting how? Mazarin brought up a magnified view of the particles on the display. Under the stasis conditions, their crystalline structure had started to reconfigure, aligning into sharper, more angular formations. They're evolving, Mazarin said, her voice tinged with concern. If they continue to adapt, they may destabilize the plasma entirely, even in stasis. Nathan leaned closer to the display, studying the new formations. These things aren't just reacting to the plasma. They're parasitic. They're trying to use it to sustain themselves. Varys, who had been silent for some time, coiled his serpentine body tighter. If they are parasitic, then their behavior may offer a solution. Parasites require specific conditions to thrive. If we disrupt those conditions, they can't survive, Nathan finished, his mind racing. What if we force them into a hostile environment? Something they can't adapt to fast enough. Mazarin's glow flickered as she considered this. We would need to determine their tolerance range, temperature, frequency, or even chemical interaction. Exactly, Nathan said. But we can't experiment on the ambassador directly. We'd need to isolate a sample of the particles and test their limits in the lab. Varys gestured toward the containment chamber. The difficulty lies in extracting a sample without further destabilizing his plasma system. Nathan's gaze shifted to the equipment in the room. His eyes landed on a microplasma siphon, a device designed for precision plasma extraction. What about that? If we use the siphon to isolate a small sample, we can minimize the risk to his system. Mazarin hesitated, her glow dimming. It is a risky procedure. If the plasma harmonics are disrupted during extraction, he won't make it, Nathan finished grimly. I know, but we don't have another choice. After a tense moment, Mazarin nodded. Very well. Prepare the siphon. The procedure required absolute precision. Mazarin's steady hands guided the siphon, its ultra-fine tip piercing the containment chamber's energy field and entering the ambassador's plasma network. Nathan monitored the holographic display, watching for any signs of destabilization. Hold it steady, he said, his voice low but firm. Mazarin adjusted the siphon, her tricolored eyes narrowing in concentration. A faint hum filled the room as the device extracted a small sample of plasma, complete with its crystalline contaminants. Extraction complete, Mazarin announced, withdrawing the siphon carefully. Nathan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Good. Let's get that to the lab. The lab's sterile air was thick with tension as the team analyzed the extracted sample. The crystalline particles, now isolated from the ambassador's plasma, shimmered faintly under the microscope's energy field. They're more complex than we initially thought, Mazarin said, adjusting the magnification. Their structure is dynamic, constantly reconfiguring to optimize their interaction with the plasma. Nathan studied the data streaming across the monitors. They're adapting to survive, which means they have weaknesses. We just need to find them before they figure out how to bypass the stasis entirely. Mazarin activated a series of test simulations, subjecting the particles to varying frequencies, temperatures, and chemical interactions. Most of the attempts yielded little effect. The particles adapted too quickly. What if we overwhelm them, Nathan suggested. Masserin turned to him, her glow shifting slightly. Overwhelm them. Back on Earth, when we deal with antibiotic-resistant bacteria, we use combination therapies. Instead of one treatment, we hit them with multiple things at once, things they can't adapt to quickly enough. That would require precise synchronization, Varys said, his voice skeptical but thoughtful. A combination of frequencies, temperatures, and chemical inhibitors delivered simultaneously. Nathan nodded. Exactly. We force them into a state where they can't adapt fast enough and essentially shut them down. Masserin's glow brightened slightly. It is a bold strategy, but it has merit. We would need to construct a simulation to test potential combinations. Then let's get started, Nathan said. The simulations were grueling, requiring hours of trial and error. Masserin and Varys worked tirelessly to calibrate the test conditions, while Nathan contributed ideas based on his Earth-based medical experience. Finally, after countless failed attempts, the monitors displayed promising results. A specific combination of frequencies, temperatures, and chemical inhibitors had disrupted the particle's structure, rendering them inert. This could work, Masserin said, her glow bright with hope. Nathan grinned, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten. Let's make it happen. Back in the operating chamber, the team prepared to administer the treatment. The harmonic field generator was modified to deliver the synchronized combination therapy directly into the ambassador's plasma system. Masserin adjusted the controls, her hands steady but her glow betraying her nervousness. This is our last chance. Nathan nodded, his gaze fixed on the ambassador. Let's do it. The generator activated with a soft hum, its modified field enveloping the ambassador. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then the holographic display showed the crystalline particles beginning to dissolve. They're breaking apart, Masserin said, her voice filled with relief. The ambassador's plasma harmonics smoothed out completely, his respiratory nodules resuming their steady rhythm. Color returned to his skin, the iridescence brightening with each passing moment. He's stabilizing, Varys said, his tone filled with reluctant admiration. Nathan leaned back, his body sagging with relief. We did it. Masserin turned to him, her glow softening. Your unconventional approach may have just saved his life, Dr. Carter. Nathan allowed himself a small smile. It's what we do. The ambassador's plasma harmonics had stabilized, and his vital signs now hummed within a safe range. The bioplasmic regulators, no longer overburdened, maintained a steady rhythm as color returned to his iridescent skin. The once critical atmosphere in the operating chamber had softened into cautious optimism. Nathan Carter slumped into a chair against the wall, his exhaustion catching up to him. Though the ambassador's recovery was well underway, something still gnawed at the edges of his mind. The crystalline particles weren't natural. Their complexity and adaptability suggested deliberate engineering, and their presence in a Drexilian envoy was far too specific to be a coincidence. Masserin approached, her glow steady now that the immediate crisis had passed. The treatment was successful. The particles are neutralized, and his plasma system is functioning within normal parameters. You should be proud, Dr. Carter. Nathan shook his head. It's not over yet. Someone put those particles in him. We don't know who or why. Varys uncoiled slightly, his expression unreadable. The ambassador was not exposed to such anomalies by chance. If this was intentional, as you suggest, it poses a significant threat to intergalactic diplomacy. Drexilian retaliation could destabilize entire sectors. Exactly, Nathan said. We need to figure out where those particles came from. The ambassador deserves answers. Masserin glanced at the sleeping patient, her glow flickering with concern. If we pursue this, it will take us beyond the scope of medical intervention. Are you certain this is the right path? Nathan straightened. What's the point of saving him if we ignore the threat that nearly killed him? We owe him more than that. Masserin hesitated, then gave a small nod. Then let's begin. The investigation started with a detailed analysis of the crystalline particles. Now inert, their molecular structure could be fully examined without the interference of the Drexilian plasma. Using Telluria's advanced spectral analyzers, the team mapped the particles down to their atomic composition. These crystalline lattices are synthetic, Vera said, his tone sharp with certainty. Their structure bears the hallmarks of advanced engineering. Nathan leaned over the holographic display. What kind of engineering? Are we talking medical, industrial, or something else? Masrin expanded the analysis, cross-referencing the data with Telluria's extensive databases. The lattice structure is consistent with nanofiltration technologies used in plasma refining, specifically for extracting volatile compounds from unstable plasma sources. Plasma refining, Nathan repeated. Who does that? Primarily Drexilian industrial colonies, Vera said. But the technology is not exclusive to their species. Many intergalactic corporations employ similar techniques. Masrin's glow dimmed as she highlighted a section of the data. This signature, however, is unique. It corresponds to a facility on Vethralis 4, an independent mining colony. Nathan frowned. What would a mining colony have to do with Ambassador Varel? Vera's coiled tighter. Vethralis 4 is known for its volatile political situation. The colony operates on the fringes of intergalactic law, and its governance is fractured between competing factions. If the particles originated there, it suggests a deliberate attempt to implicate or destabilize Drexilian interests. Masrin's glow pulsed with alarm. Sabotage. If the ambassador's death had been attributed to natural causes, the underlying source might have gone unnoticed, allowing further incidents to occur. Nathan felt a chill run down his spine. So this wasn't just an attack on the ambassador, it was the opening move in something bigger. The ambassador regained consciousness the next day, his condition steadily improving. Though weak, he was coherent enough to listen as Nathan and the others explained what they had discovered. Vethralis 4, Varel murmured, his voice rasping through his still recovering respiratory nodules. I was scheduled to mediate a trade dispute there next month. The Drexilian government has been negotiating access to their plasma mining facilities. That's not a coincidence, Nathan said. Whoever did this didn't want you making it to that negotiation. Do you know who might stand to gain from disrupting it? Varel's eyes dimmed slightly as he thought. Several factions opposed Drexilian involvement in Vethralis 4. Some fear it would lead to exploitation, while others worry it would destabilize the colony's fragile autonomy. Do you have enemies in those factions? Masrin asked. As an ambassador, enemies are an occupational hazard, Varel replied with a faint smile, but none who would resort to such methods, or so I thought. Nathan leaned forward. We traced the particles to Vethralis 4. If we get access to their plasma refining facility, we might be able to prove who's behind this. Varel nodded slowly. The Drexilian government will want answers. I will authorize your investigation. The journey to Vethralis 4 was tense. Masrin and Veras accompanied Nathan to provide their expertise, while Varel remained under observation at Telluria. The mining colony was a stark contrast to the gleaming medical station, its landscape dominated by towering refineries that belched plumes of glowing vapor into the atmosphere. The team was greeted by a representative of the colony's central administration, a wiry humanoid named Kalon. His tone was polite, but his expression betrayed unease as they explained their purpose. Crystalline particles engineered to destabilize plasma, Kalon said, shaking his head. I assure you, none of our facilities would produce such a thing intentionally. Nathan crossed his arms. We're not here to place blame. We're here to figure out how this happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. Can we access your plasma refining facility? Kalon hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Very well. Follow me. Inside the facility, Masrin and Veras analyzed the refining process while Nathan combed through the logs. It didn't take long to find discrepancies. Here, Nathan said, pointing to a series of flagged shipments. These plasma batches were processed with modified nanofiltration lattices. The logs don't say why. Masrin expanded the data, her glow dimming with concern. These modifications matched the molecular signature of the particles found in the ambassador. Veras hissed softly. This facility is complicit. Kalon, who had been watching uneasily, paled. I don't know anything about this. These modifications aren't standard protocol. Who authorized them? Nathan asked. Kalon checked the logs, his expression darkening. Rivos. He's a faction leader with significant influence over this facility. If he's involved. Nathan frowned. Where can we find him? Rivos' office was a stark, utilitarian space overlooking the refinery. The faction leader, a broad-shouldered Drexilian with cold eyes, listened impassively as the team presented their findings. You've come a long way to accuse me, Rivos said, his tone even. We're not accusing, Nathan said. We're stating facts. These particles came from your facility, and they nearly killed Ambassador Varel. Explain how that happened. Rivos leaned back, his expression unreadable. The modifications were experimental, designed to increase plasma yield during refinement. I had no intention of causing harm. Then why wasn't it disclosed? Masarin asked. Rivos' gaze hardened. Because innovation often requires discretion, and the ambassador's condition was unfortunate but unrelated. Nathan stepped closer. That's a convenient excuse. But we have the data to prove otherwise. These particles weren't just an accident. Someone used them as a weapon. Rivos' silence spoke volumes. You've jeopardized lives and intergalactic stability, Varys said coldly. You will answer for this. The team returned to Teleria with their findings. The evidence against Rivos and his faction was undeniable, prompting swift action from the Galactic Council. Ambassador Varel, now fully recovered, thanked Nathan and the team personally. You not only saved my life, Varel said, but prevented further chaos. Drexilian diplomacy owes you a great debt. Nathan smiled, the weight of the ordeal finally lifting. Just doing my job. Let's hope it's a long time before something like this happens again.